1:30.
Well, if everyone's ready, why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? It's the Public Works and Facilities Subcommittee. November 16th, 2022, and the first item is the first call to order and roll call. Michael, let the records reflect that Councilman Paula, myself, David Kelly, and Kevin Thompson are with us, as well as Mr. Cox in the audience. Do you have anyone out there in the audience?
We also have, I'm going to promote Vanessa Apodaca,
Okay.
our interim city engineer. We do have two attendees, one by phone number 849-2766.
Okay.
And we have Derek Montaigne as an attendee. So
Okay.
we'll, they're ready to, if you want to speak, we'll see raised hand, but
Very good.
otherwise we have a full subcommittee right now.
Approval of the minutes of October the 20th. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Any corrections to be made?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the approval of the draft minutes.
Okay.
One second.
Any opposed? Okay, let the records reflect that the minutes are approved. First item is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the city council subcommittee on items that do not appear on the agenda may do so. Just state your name for the records and share with us what you have to say.
Chair Walter, neither of the attendees online are raising their hand.
Okay, nor here in the conference room. All right, communications, anything?
No communications, Vice Mayor, Chair.
Okay, well, I guess the first item, new business, is discussion on Purple Park playground renovations.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll introduce this item and I'm going to check to see if our caller under attendees, caller 2766 is that you, Shana? I don't know if that's you, if you can maybe raise a hand or let us know. But let me proceed. So we've been working with Shana Priest, and she's the client service manager with the Miracle Playground Group. They're a playground and equipment provider. It was to look at refreshing it's our existing playground equipment at Berber Park. The existing play structure is one of the oldest structures within our inventory of playgrounds. Most recently, we completed, I'd say we, our parks team, completed a replacement of the slide structure. But we're finding that given the age of the equipment, it's getting harder to find replacement parts. With that said, it's still got some useful life left. So we, engaging with the Miracle Playground Group, we looked at some different options. There's really two play areas. One that's got the play structure, and then there's quite a bit of area around the play structure. And then to the west there is a swing structure, and it's somewhat dated. It's an older style swing structure, and we've seen a lot of improvements in terms of the opportunity. I'll call it the fun opportunity, but also in terms of safety improvements in playground equipment. And so engaging with Miracle Playground, they put together a presentation for us that provides different options. Some of those options include really a complete replacement of the existing structure with adding new structure, recognizing that there is some, again, useful life. There's opportunities to just add features to the existing playground structure to make it more, provide more inviting, more engagement for our community. And likewise, where the the existing swing structure is, there's room there for additional play structures, but we can also look at replacing that because it is an older model. Some of the considerations to think about is the different target age groups. So typically, they tend to follow kind of roughly. They usually start at about from 2 years of age and go to about 5, and then kind of increments from there, and that are kind of based on the skill sets, the challenges that you want to get at different children at different ages. And of course, even some of these are things that look fun as an adult, but they're really designed for the kids. So what we've come up with is a presentation. We walked through. There's lots of different themes. There's lots of different types of play structures and or amenities for different kinds of activity, and kind of really try to look at what the space would provide for, and provide as many options. I mean, there's so many. It's hard, you kind of try to narrow it down to something that is workable, but also we know that budget is obviously a guiding factor as well. So we kind of looked at it from do some simple additions to complete replacement. And included in the packet is a presentation. Actually, the consultant did some fairly nice rendering to kind of give a perspective of what the structures might look like if they were replaced or put in place, and also kind of targeting again some of the new concepts that are available with the structures. Long gone are the days of the really tall metal slide. And some of the other things that have just the technology has evolved. So there's just some really neat opportunities to add some features there. And again, I think from our experience of our park superintendent, which he was unable to make it today, in a training session that was scheduled for today. Wanted to kind of talk to the age groups and who is he see as the users there, and some of the presentations geared towards the younger, kind of that 2 to 5, and maybe even up to 8 years old. It's really a popular age group. Of course, we've got youth soccer there, often playing, and so these kind of become features that some of the groups can utilize as part of engaging in in recreation and play activity. So
yeah.
I'll kind of pause there. We can walk through. I was hoping that our consultant was going to join us.
But while you're doing that, David, I just want to say that I'm not looking at text messages or emails. I'm looking at the slide presentation that we're going to have here in a minute. So yeah,
one of the proposals also is for the install of the cornhole, the bag toss. Which would replace the horseshoe.
Yeah, again, kind of
two, Kevin.
Well, she's got the estimate here for 1. She said that she thinks 2 could get squeezed in. One of the variables on that is replacing the sand with artificial turf. So it would be a turf surface that costs more. Obviously, that doesn't have to be part of it, but it's an option.
Yeah, it'd probably be ideal around it's I guess technically the game got different monikers. It's bag toss, bean bags, cornhole, bags, and so you'll hear different monikers
Let's call it bean bag toss.
Yes,
that one.
That page that you're looking at now is not in the slide presentation on the attachments, right?
Right. So we after the packet was agendized, she was our playground consultant was busy getting some cost estimates, and we did upload them to Granicus, but so they are available for your review. Again, we just wanted to introduce this item and get any feedback from from the subcommittee, and then work on refining the proposal to address, the subcommittee's input and feedback.
Councilmember Paul?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm really happy to see that we're, thinking of moving forward with replacing the outdated equipment. Oftentimes when you have broken things and you can't get parts and it sits abandoned almost. And we surely don't want people to get hurt, especially children, playing on this equipment. So I'm full support of moving forward with updating the equipment. I do like the proposal. Those horseshoe pits are never used. They really do need to go. I think the bean bag is a good option. I was unable to really look at the price and just kind of put it in perspective, but I do support moving forward with the proposal. I think it's really needed. So.
Well, just a couple things on my end. First of all, I just want to make sure that we're not neglecting Tormund Park down in the Tormund section. That's an older facility. I'm not sure what that equipment looks like, but I know Councilmember Brigham, former Councilmember Brigham, would definitely want us to take a look at that. And I think we should do that. The ones that are really visible are Vintage Meadows, City Park, and Ferber, and we tend to forget about Tormund. So if we could just take a quick sneak peek at that one. The other thing, discussion item number 2 kind of rolls into discussion item number 1, where we're going to be talking about a second pickleball, the bean toss, and bocce courts. So, other than giving a look at the prices, which I couldn't see either, why don't we roll into number 2? If there's no discussions on item number 1, maybe we could just bring them both together now.
Vice Mayor, happy to accommodate. We do have cost estimates. I think if you like, we can just put them on the screen. Mike, if you can, that most recent attachment.
Yeah, I can't read that.
Yeah.
Can you make it bigger, Mike?
Yeah, very good. And minimize the screen. I can move this out of the way here. So it looks like the bag toss game, and they're about $2,900 for a set. In this case, looking at 2 and $5,800, and then that does include tax. So we normally do collect tax.
So if you scroll back up to the top in the upper right-hand corner, am I looking at all the enhancement items?
So that cost there, if we scroll down a little bit, Mike, that's $65,000. So that's just for the equipment. And then I'm sorry, Mike, scroll up just a little bit. I'm sorry. One more page to the just bottom. So what we see here is this is the installation services that would be necessary to accommodate those. So the evacuate knock all sand, the pressure treated nailer boards, which they would be affixed to, the base rock and in some of the associated equipment. So this is really a comprehensive proposal to do all the work. We haven't done a full evaluation of this, having it just coming in so quick prior to the meeting.
Okay.
But maybe what we can do, Chair, is hone in on the cost estimates, kind of bring it back and summarize it with the different options. So it's kind of in a table and tie the costs to the equipment.
Is there some of that work that our parks group could prepare, that they do some of the preparation work in lieu of having it on the bid proposal?
Yeah, I think that's something we'll want to look at. So some of the off-call material, I know our parks team is really good at reusing materials, and so we can.
Yeah, because it seems the number looks high, but again, not seeing the big picture, it just looks like quite a bit of money.
Right. We did ask for, turnkey proposals, what would it take to kind of, have it be ready to go turnkey, but we can drill down and look at, what are elements that we might be able to do, in-house, with our staff at a lower cost, and then, reflect that in the cost estimate.
Good.
I'd like to, as we roll number 2 into this, come off the dollar amounts for a minute and just pretend that we had all the money we needed in Queen Bee Act funds. Do we know what that balance is, by the way? We just received some new money coming in from Home Gardner, and tell us how much we have to spend, David.
Well, that's, I think, my recommendation, Chair, would be, we add that as a new business item. And the reason being is we need to do a little bit of analysis because of, we wanted, obviously we just completed the pickleball, so we know that, do a check-in on the park restroom project, and we're just starting the basketball project, so we have all those numbers. But we want to make sure we factor in what we identify for contingency, and then what our fund balance looks like. So we can do a kind of basically an update on the fund balance showing planned expenditures against what we have in there today. So because if I give you a number today, it's
Part of it
changing.
is committed.
Right. So we kind of need to break it down as fund balance, planned expenditures, additional revenue expected, and kind of give you an estimated fund balance based on that. And then that gives us a little bit more information around what we're looking at.
Well, one of the things I'm interested in, and I'll just kind of kick it off, Joe, on item number 2. I'm interested in the beanbag toss, more or less at 2nd Street Park, right where those horseshoe pits are. That's a wide open space. Currently, there's 4 horseshoe pits. I know that they're not utilized. You can just tell by looking at them. So I think it would be ideal to have, if we can get 2 or 3 beanbag tosses right there, I think that would be a good environment. I'm just a little concerned when we start utilizing Ferber Park too much, when we have a lot of non-residents coming into that section, and there's parking in the street, they're staying in the park late. Did we not receive some concerns over the noise of the pickleball yet?
No, we did not.
Oh, was that my imagination? No.
Well, I've heard something. I've heard it.
Okay.
There's been news from other pickleball facilities. It's been identified as an issue in other areas of the county where some of them have lights,
Yeah.
and it facilitates playing, and it's because there's such a national movement to increase the sport. We're seeing a lot of consternation, particularly from the tennis players, and so.
Yeah. Well, I just think that beanbag would tend to cause more hooting and hollering than pickleball. So to have a beanbag that close to the residents, I think it would be better on 2nd Street Park. It's kind of in front of the parking lot. There's only a church across the street with 2 residents. That's what I was thinking for a beanbag. And then pickleball, I was thinking for, yeah.
Beanbag, if we could, I'd like to look at both. I think, again, the horseshoe, they're not,
Right.
it's wasted space. And for $5,000 to be able to put something in there that's going to be used. Ferber Park is used highly by a lot of the kids in the neighborhoods and from other neighborhoods. And I think we should look at that and look at both for that. That would be a good use.
Yeah, Clark, don't forget, Clark Park.
Tom, you can tell me.
Clark Park is what it's called.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know that they have nothing that matters, I guess. I'm not sure, Bob, that they have foster kids there.
They don't, no,
I think it probably.
Yeah.
put in-
that would be a nice addition.
And then, Kevin, I know you and I spoke, about possibly another, pickleball, court in Ferber Park where the big swing set is.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure if that spot's big enough, but
yeah,
you,
we're gonna take a look at that.
Okay.
I'm just gonna measure it. I don't know, what we're proposing here would replace that swing set and have more, for 2 to 5 year olds or,
Yeah.
or 2 to 5 to 12.
What I hear you saying, right, Mary, you'd like staff to evaluate, rather than looking at playground equipment replacement there, actually adding another set of courts in that location.
well,
I think in conjunction with both. I
Yeah.
think What I'm
Look at
hearing,
options.
that equipment's gonna go, can it be located in such a way that would accommodate another court? I think that's.
well, the only thing that we're losing, if we considered another pickleball court, is the old metal swing set.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning that now they're more compact, and could fit in other locations.
Yeah, we would have to probably remove that, all of those, that area. So, and then, that would be the pickleball, so then where the playground structure is, look at what can be accommodated there.
Right.
Either as a replacement or an addition.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the budget's gonna be very informative, because I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to, afford all of it, but we'll do that analysis.
Right.
But it may not be immediate, but it can be planned into the future.
Michael, why don't we open it up to the public if there's anyone that has their hand raised, in the audience? And, Mr. Cox, anything to add?
Nothing's been said about, Greenwich Meadow Park. And, pickleball court or a big bag top there.
Well, we did talk about vintage metals in the past, and I really think we should seriously look at putting, rather than have everybody in the city have to go to one park to do a certain event, spread it around, because it's nice to keep people in their neighborhoods, so they don't have to get in the car, their kids can walk to the park, not have to be dropped off by a vehicle. So I think spreading those around makes all the sense in the world. Thank you. And we did talk about that, and I think Vintage Meadows has plenty of space without encroaching onto that big grass area that is used for multiple events, but over in the right towards Hillsburg Avenue side, there's a lot of grass area over there that's just grass that could easily, some of that converted to a usable space.
Well, the only, I hate to use the word problem, but the only issue with Vintage Meadow Park is the fact that the Lighting and Landscape District pays for a lot of that maintenance and upkeep, other than what the city has taken, which I believe is the restroom portion. Everything else is paid by the Lighting and Landscape District.
Well,
And I think, Joe, they're under the impression that they have the right to refuse anything that we may want to put there. And I think we had that discussion when we talked about the dog park coming there. So, but I don't see it as something we can't overcome.
we've looked into that in the past, and unless something's changed, that any additions becomes solely the city's responsibility
Right.
to fund and maintain. We can't pass that on to the Lighting and Landscape District. So adding the pickleball courts becomes a city amenity. It is a city park, regardless. It's just how it's funded. Adding that amenity, it becomes the city's responsibility to maintain it. They can't pass that cost. So that's really, but there is a lot more space over there. And it's used heavily by a lot of kids. And it seems a shame to have those kids have to go all the way to Ferber Park to play pickleball when they can play right there.
Yeah.
And we have seen, the group that was supporting pickleball, for this new edition at Ferber, they really got their start at Vintage Meadows. So it seems like at least they were doing it informally with their own improvements or their own equipment. But in so much the community, I would presume we never heard any complaints or issues about the activity there. Now, again, if you formalize it, that's a different thing. Actually, surprising was that because they used the basketball courts, I think there could have been some conflicts at times, but they kind of worked those out. Whereas if you built an addition to it, then you'd avoid that conflict, and you'd have really both basketball and pickleball together.
So I think the big concern was that the residents would be having to fund all that, and that's just not the case.
So do we have a clear understanding of what we're looking for, do you think?
So, summarize what we need to do is bring back the cost estimates tied to some different alternatives. Get that before before the agenda is finalized, so we can really look at the different alternatives with the cost estimates tied to them, and then look at as kind of an option is in lieu of improving part of the playground, maybe converting that to pickleball, what that looks like, and then also adding pickleball and or pickleball at Vintage Meadows. And of course, I think the easiest one is the firming up the cost estimate specifically for Bagtoss State Park, to replace the existing horseshoe pits.
And you take a look at Clark Park as well.
Yeah.
Just update on that.
And, I know you had mentioned removing the sand at Purple Park and all, but heck, couldn't you just throw some grass seed on it? Be done with it.
That's what we were thinking about putting the artificial turf there. Yeah, it doesn't have to, it's just an option. We'll lay it all out for you. You can see what it costs, and
Okay.
it could just stay sand, and the bag toss could work that way.
Yeah.
And just be nicer with the turf, but
And just one other thing on pickleball, if I could, at the school subcommittee, Monday, I think it was Monday, we talked a little bit, and the school district is all on board, and we're gonna try to get it into the MOU as we finalize it, but they're all on board allowing us to double mark those courts, at least some of them, and to maintain use of the courts for pickleball. That would be after school hours and on weekends, kind of how the tennis courts are used today, and that's so, and they're very much supportive of that, and so David and I will be exploring that as we finalize the MOU. But that would really open up maybe 2 or 3 more courts available to the community during non-school hours.
Yeah, and summertime would be fantastic. Yeah.
High school pickleball team.
Yeah, there you go.
I was impressed to see how many high school age kids were playing pickleball at River Park. There's kids, all kinds of them out there playing pickleball. That's great. It's fun to watch it.
I saw some young kids down in Purple Park. I was walking the dog the other day, and they had a tennis ball, and they were whacking the tennis ball over with their paddles, and it was like that thing would take off and go over the fence. So it's almost like we have to have a box of equipment there. I don't know how expensive that stuff is, but
Yeah, we set up a program in collaboration with both the senior center and La Familia Sauna, where they have both rackets and balls. We purchased them, the city did. We have a checkout form with the basic information to ensure that there's some accountability. But those are available to the community to check out. But we've talked about the idea of just maybe putting a basket down there with balls. They're fairly low cost. And, they may disappear, but we can replace them from time to time. Our intent is really to promote activity, and as long as we're not doing it at a significant expense, I think we can a basket down there, put some balls, and just hopefully the honor system. There's not really any good reason to take one home on, other than maybe the wiffle ball.
We could go down the creek and fish them out, because I'm sure that's where they're gonna wind up with the kids. So,
So one more thing on
Yes,
pickleball,
please.
there was a note from our ambassador, pickleball association ambassador, regarding the possibility of blocking the courts at night. And I threw out a suggestion, and I don't know if you had a chance to look into it, to, currently we have the police department lock up the restrooms at dark. They go, and would it be possible to have them also lock the pickleball court gate? And then during the day, when our public works crew goes out to unlock them, the restrooms, they can unlock the pickleball courts. It just seems, I realize nobody should be in there anyway, because the parks are closed and it's signed, but it would just be an extra sense of security. Because there is some concerns raised, and there was some social media comments made about potentially using it as a fireworks display area. Yeah, a good place, and again, it was just on social media, but it just makes sense. We do know the school district does lock the tennis courts for that particular reason, and I think it makes sense since we have the ability that we do lock those courts. Nobody should be in there in the evening when it starts.
We can coordinate with parks and police department on what's the right kind of. I don't think the gate was set up. Maybe it's just on what see what kind of the setup if they put a chain on it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard, not to make it complicated, but it just makes sense. We have nets there. If somebody goes in there and damages the nets, that's a big expense. And so.
and I guess eventually we're getting a second gate on that.
That's the whole thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, why don't we move on to our striping maintenance program?
Yeah, I think this agenda item was requested by Councilmember Paula, is looking at what it has been a practice of the city to identify how the city engages in its kind of annual striking maintenance and improvement program. Just real quick, I think the item.
If I may, there, where I was asking is, I know in the past, many years back, our public works team would do various intersections throughout the year. You'd see them out there restriping limit lines, stop, signs, crosswalk. We may do one or two intersections any given week that were in need. It wasn't like every week, but there was some, and they would be on the work list to go out and do it. We'd see them throughout the city doing that. And that kind of faded away several years ago. And what I wanted to do here is for was they were doing it. And that's why I asked them, Craig Johnson be the guy to come and give us a little history on how they did that, how they made it work. What kind of equipment did they have? Do they still have that equipment? Are they in need of equipment? I mean, what is going on? Because maintenance has been non-existent, and it shows. And so I know we talked about it at budget session. We did approve a budget to hopefully make a dent in putting those improvements in. But my biggest concern is it's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge. Once it's done, you got to keep it up. And I want to make sure at least that we do have the means, the equipment and the supplies needed so they can do that and get it back into a program so it's maintained.
Yeah, and I appreciate that overview and feedback, and likewise, both Kevin and I have talked to Craig Johnson. He had, being such a long-term employee, has that institutional knowledge. When we were, we had a larger staff, how we scheduled and conducted the street maintenance striping work. And of course, so we're kind of approaching it in kind of two distinct ways. One is developing the striping plan with W-Trans work to focus on striping our main arterials, so Cloverdale Boulevard and Foothill, streets at Treadway, and Vanessa is coordinating with W-Trans on their agreement. Their agreement's been executed, and getting that the initial work underway of just identifying striping standards and so forth. That's something where you're gonna, for that work, for the larger arterials, put out there. So we'll kind of start that process, and there's some examples in the county of where cities, they kind of, once you kind of hone in on cost, you set a budget, you just, every year you put it out to bid for a certain amount, and that's a way to make sure you're keeping your main arterials, in accordance with current standards. And then, and I think maybe this is where there needs to be more city staff focus, is on the stop bars, the lettering, stop lettering, and crosswalks, particularly where some of that can be done either by way of painting or thermoplastic. And I had a discussion with the streets crew, and of course we talked about price. So what we want to do is prioritize the key areas with identifying what are the high use areas with a focus on our areas around schools and parks. We and specifically mentioned Vintage Meadows. You kind of see a lot of that is the thermoplastic. So I think what we're gonna start to do is, again, identify those areas, prioritize, and start getting that work done that can be done without formal bidding or need for traffic control. And so my goal is to really get that initiated in this next calendar year, 2023, where we have the program, we can identify it, share it with council and subcommittee. Here's all the key intersections that we need to do, and here's how we're gonna tackle them with the schedule. So that's I think that's the stated goal, and even kind of put it down on paper, and mirror that to tie it to the budget as well. Hopefully we'll have a public works director on board, and that'll be key to making sure that the work schedule can get time to keep on schedule. I don't know, Vanessa, is there anything you wanted to add or share about your coordination with W-Trans and or the kind of this, the thermoplastic work that we can do around our key intersections, and how we want to work with our team to coordinate getting that work done?
Well, for the work with W-Trans, I'm working with Daleen to schedule a kickoff meeting to get that work. And we're hopeful that the construction job that on that end would start hopefully next summer, spring to summertime. As far as kind of ongoing maintenance, something came up, it kind of occurred to me, Jay is very good with tracking sewer maintenance, ongoing annual sewer maintenance work. And so he's very interested in the streets. He's regularly reminding us which streets are distressed. And so I'd like to loop Jay in as part of the key team, at least for the meantime, to help identify some of the striping and overall street maintenance.
Yeah, I think Paul, one of your questions too was around there's an agenda equipment needs, and I did confirm with our team that our striper that we had was aged and really no longer functional. So I'm gonna work on specs and see where we are. I don't think we included it in the budget, but we'll see if I have no idea what
Cost.
a striper costs. I mean, that we do have things that can require painting, or we traditionally paint versus use thermoplastic. Those include things like our city hall parking lot, our city parking lots, like the cemetery adjacent to the theater, behind Papa's Pizza, and those need to be striped periodically, and other kind of smaller details whereas a lot of the intersections, I think that's the thermoplastic, which is a product that they actually use kind of a heated a tool to basically melt it in place. So we have that.
Yeah, Craig's looking into the striper, so he had a couple of quotes. It's pretty expensive.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
$10,000-$12,000.
But we have so many uses for one, that, you know, it's kind of like, we want to get the work done, we got to get the right equipment.
Right.
So we're kind of, again, maybe it's really three different tasks is spec and purchase a new striper, coordinate with W-Trans on finalizing the work plan and specs for the major arterials, and then coordinating the schedule and intersections for restriping with thermoplastic. I think that's our planned approach.
And what was the timeline you mentioned? I think Vanessa may have mentioned it for the project with the contract to start the work on the main arterials.
Well, we've executed that. I think the goal is this spring, Vanessa, to have it done and put it out to bid.
That's the plan.
So when you say put it out in bid, that doesn't mean people will have, it may be award a bid, but it may be months before they could start the project. In other words, contractors can be busy, and I'm just wondering, I'm thinking timeline. Are we looking before the end of the budget cycle, or are we looking at trying to carry this over again for another budget cycle, or?
Well, we have, of course, council adopted a 2-year budget, so we've got a budget for next fiscal year for 23-24. So I think, generally speaking, we've got the budget in place. And it will be dependent on where the bids come in. But part of the bid specs will identify and correct me if I'm wrong, Vanessa, but what we anticipate, usually the bid specs will say you have X number of days to complete the work. So upon execution of contract, and that's, we'll coordinate with Vanessa and W-Trans on, really trying to tighten that up as much. So we're not going to say you got 8 months to do it. It's going to be, within 60, 90 days, something like that, upon execution of contract.
Thank you.
A lot of it's just the bureaucratic process that we go through with bidding and the timelines and it may be something we can look at, even though we do the specs, because we want to have that process, whether we can do that informally or not, we'll know more as we take it. It definitely needs, we certainly recognize it needs to get done.
So, and just to kind of piggyback on that thought, it needs to get done. I had lunch today at Zinni's, and that in itself is not a big deal, but I ran into a fellow there. His first name is Guy. He was over in Delaware. Do you know his last name, Joe?
I don't, but he's a very nice man.
Very nice, a longtime member of the community. He's 92 years old.
Oh, wow.
He still drives. And he was telling me a story that his children were concerned about him driving at 92. So they hired a driving instructor from Santa Rosa to come up and take him out for a road test, kind of like, assessment just to make sure. And he said they were driving, and one of the first things the driving instructor said is, you're drifting a little bit, and the city needs to restripe the lines because the lines were faded. He couldn't see. So, I'm sure to some extent it could be a potential lawsuit, but here's a 92-year-old man that came to the same conclusion that they need to be restriped. So anyhow, just a small story.
Even though the equipment is expensive to purchase, you take a look at its use over length of time versus hiring it done each and every time you put it out to bid.
Yeah.
And that's expense even greater than maybe the purchase of the equipment.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer, if we have the tasks that need to be done, especially on a regular basis, we need to get the right equipment to do it.
Have it ready right now.
Right now, right now. With supplies, adequate supplies in-house.
Michael, anybody out in the audience to have their hand raised?
No one is raising their hand at this time, Chair.
Thank you. All right, why don't we move on to, speaking of purchasing equipment, dump truck and a chipper.
Yes.
Okay, so, a new dump truck and chipper were, there was a line item in the parks budget for, purchase of both, and for they really do go hand in hand, it's the, anticipation is that, material that's chipped will be, moved to an alternative location, whether it's to a park or to, be reused in a landscape area, or ultimately brought back to the courtyard for recycling. We really do need both. If everything could be chipped in place, then you wouldn't need the dump truck, but we don't believe that all the material that gets chipped will be able to be accommodated on a place basis. So in the packet is a set of cost estimates for purchase of both, and the intent would be
Could
to.
Michael put that up, please?
Mike, can you put those? Oh, we do have, looks like we have,
I don't have my computer.
This is a Derek Montagna. Are we ready for the public comment? Oh,
Please.
Hand up.
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you, Derek.
I was just asking about the striping machine. Have you guys got quotes to rent a comparable machine and then have our guy man it?
Yes, we have. In fact, I've asked for the parking lot to be at the theater to be restriped, and because our equipment was not functional, I said, well, we still need to get it done, we'll rent it through like Action Rents. I don't have that quote in front of me, but as an interim measure, we will be renting the equipment, and that's also a good cost comparison. It's, how many times we use it, it's a rental cost versus purchase. In my experience, if you're gonna use it more than usually two times, it starts to pay for itself. So but we'll do a little evaluation on the rental versus purchase, and it's, for the most part, we tend to, for city operations, tend to support the purchasing. It just depends on the use patterns.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, we're back to the dump truck and the wood chipper. And I see that wood chipper almost costs as much as the dump truck.
Oh, yeah. Where?
I guess the chipper is going to come in somewhere around 68,000. And the dump truck is going to come in somewhere around 80,000.
Yeah.
So what was the budget? We talked about this in depth at the budget, and what was approved? Is it within the amount of?
Yeah, both of them are within the
Okay.
budgeted amount. So I think we're in good shape in terms of budget, unless Kevin's we saw otherwise.
Boy, we are in budget.
So do we have a timeline that we're going to order these?
So next step would be to bring these to council for authorization to purchase. And because they both exceed my authority, and we can coordinate, see if we can bring these forward at the next meeting.
And it should be under consent.
Yeah.
And I would like to suggest to the chair that be fixed. Once the budget's adopted for a dollar amount and the item comes within that budget amount, you should be able to move forward and not have to take it right back. It's a waste of staff time and it slows down the process considerably. So The only time it should come back once it's approved, because it's been vetted at the budget session and it's been approved. And so, my feeling is it's a done deal unless there's an issue. So that needs to be fixed, otherwise, because we can move forward much faster on approved items. And so it may be in your spending authority, it should have an exclusion for adopted items within budget and by the council.
You can sign up to that.
You can sign up to that dollar amount, whatever that item is, because it's redundant.
Right.
It makes no sense, and it takes a lot more staff time to put all this together, and then it slows it down to another month or 2 weeks at least, get it back on an agenda. So I think that should be fixed.
Yeah, maybe we can bring that back through the finance admin and police meeting with a policy to increase the purchasing authority for the city manager and
For budgeted items.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
it makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, just based on survey of city manager colleagues, they tend to be a minimum purchase authority of around 50,000. So we're pretty low in comparison, especially given the cost increases for a lot of things. It's put us in a position where everything requires council approval. I know a lot of our public work stuff could move forward fairly quickly without if we remove that limitation, subject to budget control. Anytime really that budget adjustment is required, it's going to be, unless there's some ability to do an internal or if something comes over a little bit, we have money in another line item internal, we can do that, but otherwise it requires council approval.
No, I think that needs to be fixed.
Gas in the car, you're gonna need.
I mean, it was approved once at the budget, so it makes no sense.
Maybe we do like a 10% contingency.
Michael, could you add that to the police and administration subcommittee meeting? Review and discuss city manager signing authority.
Already done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just before we get off of this item, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but when we go to purchase a dump truck or a chipper, do we piggyback with any other jurisdiction like the county under their umbrella of ordering new equipment so that we might be able to get it at a lower price? I know when we buy our police cars, we go through, I think we still go through Sacramento.
The state purchasing.
Yeah, we look for opportunities to do that, and we are part of the purchasing authority that often will give us quotes. Whether it be for vehicles or equipment. We're a member of a JPA that serves as the purchasing authority. So we'll often ask for the purchase authority quote. Sometimes, often they're better, but sometimes they're not, and we can find a local vendor that, because that would basically satisfy our purchasing requirements. But sometimes it's by asking local vendors, which, we always want to support if we can. We can get a better price. So we really do try to solicit 3 quotes, and as Hector indicated here, they don't respond, and we try, and that counts as doing our due diligence. We're really trying to save taxpayer money. The challenge, Chair, and some of these items, not often cities are buying chippers and those kinds of things, so
Fires, vegetation management, a lot of chippers out there.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no public comment, we're gonna move on to the Parks Department staffing.
Real quick, guys, tomorrow, my company has agreed to sponsor my attendance at monthly Sonoma County Public Work Director meetings. So I don't bill Cloverdale to attend these meetings, but it's certainly a great opportunity to introduce topics like this. And so I will ask the group tomorrow if there's any plans to purchase dump trucks or chippers, or if they've got any ideas on how we can go in jointly.
Or you can solicit for a director as well. What about that meeting?
They do
I've
that.
tried.
Everybody's like that.
Okay. Little pay, but good working conditions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vanessa, for adding that. Parks Department?
Yeah, Parks Department positions. I'm actually really delighted to give the subcommittee an update. So we did within our Parks Department, it really Parks Division, not a formal department yet. But with that said, we know we have a very capable park superintendent, Hector Galvan, who leads up our parks functions. And then there are currently 2 funded positions within parks. One of which was a vacant, and we still have a vacancy, but one of the positions was park maintenance technician. And that position was filled by Miguel Sanchez, and park maintenance lead. And we just completed the recruitment for the park maintenance lead, and we're really happy to report that we promoted Miguel from his technician position to lead position. So it was a nice promotion, step increase, and I think it was a great path for him. That offer letter has been made, and I think his official start date actually was Monday, and we're in position. So of course, that was an incumbent. We now have the vacancy within the park maintenance technician position, and we have since closed on recruitment, and we have 2 applicants that are interviews were scheduled. I think they're scheduled yesterday. They're scheduled yesterday, but the dates are with Kevin and Hector for that, the 2 candidates for that position. Assuming, and I think we have 2 great applicants, one of those is chosen, we'll have 2 full-time employees in parks.
Now, is that the applicants, are they internal or?
They are internal.
Oh, internal, okay.
The interviews on the 30th.
Yeah, if we wanted, with next week being a holiday, it was just a challenge to get it.
Sure.
So assuming we close that, given it's internal, it can happen pretty quickly. It's usually the employee that gives you the promotion, employer is also the employer that you have to give notice to. So and it makes it easy.
So
Plus, it'll be presumably we would have that position filled with someone who has existing knowledge of the city.
now the internal candidates, would that create another vacancy potentially?
Potentially,
Potentially.
yeah. So well, that'll be part of the consideration.
Sure. No, I'm just curious. Okay, good. Well, I look forward to being updated as that moves forward.
Yeah, we think we'll before or pretty close to December 1st, we'll have 2 full-time dedicated parks employees under Hector. And then with Miguel being promoted to the lead, he gets to be the supervisor to the technician. So that relieves a little bit of time that of Hector's time for other management duties.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So going back to the chipper and truck, timeline for that to go to council, since it has to go to council and exceed your, is that going to go on in the December?
Yeah, I think we can get it up to December meeting. Well, I mean, it's really just a simple resolution, just with the quotes that you saw in authorization.
I'd like to see it on the December one, so this doesn't go into next year before we can place that order.
Yeah, I mean, we're concerned too
I'd like
with
to
the
be
price
able to
increase.
vote on it too.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll get it on there.
Just availability of products as well. So.
That's true.
Okay, seeing no hands, we're gonna go ahead and move along to a streetlight maintenance program, current issues.
So thank you. I asked this to be put on there. You know, we have some streetlights that are out, and I know Craig has gone out and at my request, and I talked to the chief, and He's been out there on Treadway and up along, there's some on Ranch House, there's a couple right by the grocery outlet there. And so Craig went out there trying to fix them, and I thought they were fixed, and I talked to Craig, and he goes, he can't get parts for them. I guess they're obsolete, they got different lights, and they're just, so I'm a little concerned. We have a lot of lights out throughout the city, and we're not able to get them functioning. So somehow we need to kind of revisit this and figure out, do we have to replace the entire light fixture? Or is there maybe a way to get parts to maybe another manufacturer? I don't know what the issue is, but I do know it's concerning, especially how it gets dark really early now, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it's pretty dark. And going up the boulevard, there's a couple of places that one of them, I was told there's no power to the pole. Yeah, well, no, it was checked, and I got that email and I could share it, but I mean, somehow we gotta fix this, because we don't want any unintended consequences such as an injury, accident of some sort. So it does get really dark, and streetlights that are inoperable. And normally you take the pole number and get them down to Public Works, take it down and fix them. But now I'm hearing they're not able to get parts. So Vanessa, maybe you could have a conversation with Craig, because I know he's reached out several times trying to get parts, and they don't make them anymore, is what he's being told. If that is in fact accurate, that we can't get the parts from any other vendor, we need to look at how we're going to replace those lights or do something to get them operable.
Right. Oh, and we've been in conversation, and Craig's really good at communicating, the challenges that he's had with maintaining our streetlights. And a little bit of history here is that a number of the streetlights, were historically maintained by PG&E, and they kind of initially said, well, some are ours and some are yours. So then we had this mixed program or hybrid program where whenever there was a street light out, we have to determine, is it PG&E's, and look at our list, or is it ours? And then if it was theirs, well, then it would, we have to go through them to get their lights done. They have since, basically handed over the complete responsibility of all the street lights to the city. I think maybe an approach that we may want to consider, which is similar to our signal maintenance, and that is, for our signal maintenance, we contract with Republic, a firm you may have seen them when they're doing the maintenance, to do a lot of that routine maintenance activity, because they're a subsidiary of a German firm that has access to a large supply of lights and fixtures and all that, and it's kind of a specialty area, because you're dealing with different fixtures, with different, not only fixtures, but you have the kind of the lighting component itself. It's as simple as it seems. Some of it's replacing the light bulb, but you're actually trying to determine what's the appropriate lumens and for that area. So there's some complexities to it that are kind of a little bit beyond. Craig's really knowledgeable and the kind of the componentry of it, but sometimes the lighting part of it is a little. He's trying to troubleshoot things that requires an advanced level of expertise. And so, I think if we continue with the way we are, we probably need someone to help us with kind of doing this, either an inventory and trying to move to a consistent, change over the different lights to a consistent style and all that, or work with somebody like Republic to kind of institute a maintenance program. And that's what we do with the signals. Craig will do the easy light bulb replacement kind of things. But when it comes to some of the advanced signaling changes and stuff like that, which we're kind of getting there with streetlights now, it's the PG&E had folks that were more knowledgeable about, well, in this area, you want a certain lumen because you've got homes that back up to it. So there's different factors in different areas, and that might be an option for us. The downside is that you pay for that service, but you're ensuring that you've got access to a technical expertise and the equipment. And I know Craig was even worked with them on getting our two lights replaced here, and some of the technical aspects of the lighting in with our historic downtown streetlights. So I don't know if that's something you guys work, but we could get bring a maintenance agreement.
I think we need to do that. We have lights that are not operable, and to leave them inoperable is really a problem and a potential liability issue for the city. Should somebody get hurt, whether it's a trip and fall, whether it's, where they can point to two streetlights on the street, but neither one of them work, and they didn't see it, and so it gets into liability and basically a lack of maintenance of our equipment. So I really think it's important that we do have a program, and certainly I would be open to whatever you guys recommend. But the goal is to keep things maintained and operable.
Should we get a scope from the
So,
public, or?
just a couple things. Do we now have control of all the streetlights in the city?
I'm pretty sure we are. We would say control. I would say responsible.
Responsibility.
And when did that happen? Was it a while ago?
It's been something that's transitioned over time, but I think within the last 5 years, it's been this complete, almost just okay. And there was not, unfortunately, it wasn't done with a lot of official consideration. It was kind of like PG&E said, these are we're no longer going to maintain them, and they must have had some. They did this across the state. It wasn't just
Why don't they just get to decide they're not doing that anymore? And I would think if we had some prior notice, we could check to make sure that the inventory we're taking over is functioning. Otherwise, replace these bulbs first. But with that being said, when they're in an area like Councilmember Paulo mentioned, around Ranch House and all, is that the responsibility of the lighting and landscape district to replace those lights?
Well, it's the responsibility of the. I think it is. We have to look at it closely.
We talked about that years back, and that was not written into the agreement.
Okay.
Strictly landscape. They could have been written into it, but that was not part of. We researched that throughout all our districts. So you could have Jose double check that.
Yeah.
But that was reviewed, and we were told no. The lighting is the city's standalone responsibility. The lighting and landscape strictly for the landscape component.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because I thought for instance, well, I think the Finch Meadows, there's some park lighting.
Right.
So what we would.
That may be part of the park agreement.
Right. So I think that's paid for by the and because we pay a lot of utility bills. The utility costs are paid for by the landscape and lighting district. But the maintenance is a general fund item.
Okay. Well, I was just curious how we would divvy up the cost of the report of the study, amongst all the different districts, but if we've already looked into it, that's fine. Yeah, I agree. I really think the important thing is to keep the lights on. And, within reason, I'm really big on farming as much out as we can. We don't have the staff to do a lot of this work, and it's got to get done, and I'd rather see it paid for it than not get it done. So somehow we have to resolve the problem.
Right. We really only have one staff member that has the technical knowledge to work on it. And actually, the staff member's got a lot of other duties and responsibilities.
Sure.
And it's not just to provide additional staffing for that activity in coordination with our lead maintenance.
Now, how long would something like this take?
An agreement?
Yeah, I mean, do you pick up the phone tomorrow and say, come out and check our lights or what?
Well, I'll start with, email or phone call. We have, we're in routine communication with the team that does our signal maintenance. So it's just as quickly as they can turn around a proposal and we execute the agreement. Now, it's going to be a matter of budget. I don't have a sense right off the top of my head what that cost would be. But if we say, well, we got some immediate issues, I mean, that might be like the short-term fix. They wasn't going to take to get the current ones fixed versus what's the long-term maintenance program.
There's two problems there.
Yeah.
But I just want to leave this topic with one. I sat on the agreements board for 11 years, first 12 years on the council, and we saw a lot of litigation come through from all 15 member cities over the years. And the one thing we learned really early on is not having funding to fix something was not a defense.
Right.
So in the court, you're going to lose. Somebody gets hurt. I mean, they're not sympathetic to the city lack of staff and lack of funds when it comes to safety. So I just share that because we've seen it over and over and over through the cities that we just couldn't fix it. We did have funds, and then something tragic happens, and all of a sudden it's chaos. Right? And there's no real defense. So,
Several years ago, there were some lights that were PG&Es in some of the cities, and there was no rhyme or reason how they were out there. PG&E went through and upgraded all of theirs to the later style and left all the city to do that. The newer, what are their LEDs? They're much more efficient. They don't take their maintenance that these other ones take. So there's got to be a program to be able to upgrade the existing one that are the old fashioned, that are the problem children, that need parts that aren't available to be able to go through and change the other ones out.
and I think that's part of what we just passed with
It's the turnkey.
that's the turnkey upgrade, but that's the long-term fix. Short-term fix is getting the ones that are inoperative.
Does Craig know the ones that are out that you identified?
Well, I think he does,
Okay.
but if not, let me know and I'll be happy to get it because I drive that street frequently. And like I say, it's not just one on a block, there's like 3 or 4. So it's fairly dark.
Yeah, he gave me an overview, because he thought he had it fixed and he went out and did some work, and then it wasn't the solution. So there's some more complexities to this lighting that we're kind of, he has to try to troubleshoot. He's very good at troubleshooting, but you're dealing with all these different lights.
Well, one of the things we used to do, and Joe and Bob, I'm sure you remember, the police department, when they were on their night patrol, they would know which streetlights were burnt out.
Right. And they still do
And
that.
hopefully they still do that. Okay.
And of course, and they send those to Craig directly, so he gets them on the list for Craig.
Okay. All right, well, if there's nothing else on that topic, why don't we move along to the parking requirement for South Cloverdale Boulevard?
I think this was a discussion topic that was agendized by our interim city engineer, Vanessa Apodaca. Particularly relevant was the frontage in front of Cherry Creek Village. Understanding we've received some correspondence. Apparently one of her employees, one of the project's employees parked out front and got a ticket. And wanted to understand what the parking requirements and issues were. And Vanessa did some research on this. And so Vanessa, you want to share with the committee your findings?
Let's see, so Cherry Creek Village, it sounds like they're challenged with enough parking space for the development that's out there. And specifically, we're talking about guest parking. And so they are, proposing to prohibit guest parking on site, but then where does that leave areas for guests to park and safely get to Cherry Creek Village? And so in looking at, and apparently at least one person has already been ticketed for parking in front of this development. And so looking through city code actually prohibits parking there. It's considered the neighborhood boulevard design area, if you will. And I'm looking specifically at city code section 18.10.030. And there's a table in there with the map, and it shows pretty convincingly that the Cherry Creek Village site is in this no parking area, no parking along the boulevard. The idea is to promote walking and bicycling. There is a bike path, as we've talked about earlier. The striping is subpar, but there is a bike path in front of Cherry Creek Village. And so there's not really enough room to accommodate, aside from city code, there's not really enough room to accommodate on-street parking and the existing bike lane. And so really, in the interest of being good neighbors with the Cherry Creek Village development and that community, we're just kind of bringing this up as a topic of conversation to see if there's any interest in, looking at city code, making an exception for this development. This is going to kind of bleed into something we're talking about a little bit later, but just kind of thinking off the cuff, if we're looking at pedestrian improvements to get walkers, if you will, pedestrians from Cherry Creek Village traveling north over the creek, potentially we could solicit that design consultant to consider safe parking in the area also. But we don't want to do that if city code is pretty, if subcommittee would be the first stop to potentially looking at city code to maybe modify or look at something different for this particular development, or possibly the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood there.
Vanessa, a little more explanation on that no parking zone. You said in front of Cherry Creek. How far to the north and how far to the south does that go on that east side of Cloverdale Boulevard? I'm just curious. Does it go all the way up to the car wash, or is it the whole length, or?
It's a really kind of schematic map. But it goes across the creek. It goes quite a ways up there.
Because we have cars parking out there all the time, especially in front of Citrus Gardens, across from the fire station.
Now, the city code does kind of have some accepting language that, if there is space for a car to park, or if there are provisions for parking, there is this kind of exception language in city code. But currently, specific to the Cherry Creek Village site, it's not there. I want to say, based on this map, that it goes all the way up to the Healdsburg Avenue intersection, but I would have to look on Google Maps to see really what street that is. But
Yeah, because to your point, Chair, I'm just looking at Google Maps. There's considerable on-street parking, at least between, I would say, roughly where Tarman, maybe even where South Franklin ties in.
Yeah.
It's like right about there where you start to see on-street parking coming all the way down to at least to the Cloverdale Wine Country Inn.
Yeah.
And then as you get farther, there's not really sufficient room for on-street parking.
Well, it's almost like once we open this can of worms, it's almost like incumbent on us to do the entire length that's covered by that no parking zone.
I'm sharing the screen with this particular image from city code, and it shows, if I'm going to zoom in as far as I can here. But the Cherry Creek Village site is right about here, and you can kind of see on this schematic where the creek crossing is.
Right.
But you,
That's it, yeah, all the way to Hillsburg Avenue.
Yeah, and down, it looks like down to the car wash. What's that street there? Hillview or something, or?
Because I believe, Vanessa, for instance, we, in front of, like, let's say Los Pinos. And I thought we even have, some, like, yellow curb and other things which suggest timed parking. Which would kind of conflict with this, where you have time parking, but then in one avenue it says there's no parking. And most of the time you're gonna follow what you see, not what is in the code necessarily, unless there's signage.
Well, last time I drove past Cherry Creek, I noticed that where the fire hydrant is, I don't think we painted that red yet. Which we probably have to do.
Right.
And maybe even if we're gonna stay with the current zoning, erect a no parking. But like you said, then we're creating a problem either across the street or people are gonna park. So it's a question of where do we let them park?
Well, I think the question, the way I understood it, is should we have the consultant take a look at it and come back with some thoughts on it? And I think that makes sense, because this was all made up. First of all, what's the purpose of no parking? Obviously, the road's narrow, there's not adequate space. That all makes sense, but let them reconfirm that. There may be some exceptions that we can consider. I don't know. But it would, that was put in before the Cherry Creek project, and now it's generated a lot more cars. Are there any areas that could be an exception for that would safely allow parking? I guess that's the real question. Safely, and is it adequate for still to accommodate bicycles and pedestrians? So, I mean, I think having them look at it would not hurt anything. It's not changing anything, but they can come back with recommendation, look at the code, look at the recommendations, and determine how to move.
Yeah.
That'd be my thoughts on it.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable us making a decision here without doing some studies, because like I said, it's just creating a problem. But then again, how far do we open that can of worms? Do we consider all the way down to Hillsburg Avenue and make a decision? Or are we just concerned about that 100, 200 feet in front of Cherry Creek? I don't know.
Well, I personally like to just have take a look at the whole map area to determine, is that still adequate? Is that still, I mean, because take Cherry Creek out of the equation, though that's changed the number of cars, but there's a lot of property along there, and that some of that can be built up, i.e. the car wash. So at some point that it's a big parcel. So, I mean, just take a fresh look at it all and to determine, is there areas that would accommodate parking or not? I think the answer in most places would be no. It's fairly narrow along there. So I don't know what it would take a consultant time-wise to take a look at it, but I think it'd be good just to know. Sure. That'd be my thoughts.
So Vanessa, maybe we could coordinate and do kind of a walking / windshield survey. I'm looking at Google Maps and I can kind of see where it appears to be, we've got existing striping between the travel lane, we've got a bike lane, an area for parking. When you get to Cherry Creek or you get south of Franklin, there's not room for both the bike lane and the park. And so in that area, I think it should be notified that the sign is no parking, and that's enforceable. And then it's just really about enforcing the code. And I think maybe we can look at that exhibit and say, well, that's the exhibit, but really here's the area where no parking is going to be enforced. So we can, and if we need to amend something, we can do that.
And traffic books down that hill. I mean, traffic coming down from Ace Harbor, I mean, it just flies down that road.
and that was a concern. I talked to Chief about this. And that, coming down off that hill, just the volume and the general speed of traffic
Yeah.
It's all cause for concern, but this is one of those where, if we're looking at safety provisions for pedestrian traffic, it feels like low hanging fruit to kind of incorporate this into that scope of work, at least for the Cherry Creek Village site. I am looking here at the language, and it says on-street parking is not allowed unless separated from travel lanes by a landscaped island or where existing street configuration allows parking. So currently, street configuration does not allow parking out there. But it's possible, it is a wide right of way in that location, and it's possible the street configuration could be modified.
And I'm thinking maybe with the work with W-Trans on the striping, this is again that area where we were kind of talking about. There could be some recommendations around striping that would help address this issue of clearly where there's room for parking and there's not room for parking. Because the stripe will kind of dictate from the edge of the travel lane how much room you have and whether there's sufficient room for, because I think a parking space is at least 6 feet wide.
Oh, I think it's 8 feet wide.
8 by 8,
8
okay.
by 18 for a smaller one, 8 by 20 for a big one.
And then we like to have about another 4 feet for the bicycle lane.
It's either 4 or 5 feet, depending on whether there's a curb or not. I would have to look up the particular.
I think the most number of cars that you're gonna get in front there, considering the exit and considering the fire hydrant and considering the creek, is probably 4 at the most.
2 hydrants.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there is no parking signage out there.
Oh,
And so Chief was going to look at whether, the existing signage is still out there from before Cherry Creek Village went up.
okay.
And so it's always been a no parking zone. We think maybe the confusion is coming up because they've effectively kind of installed an intersection. It looks like an intersection at that entrance. But really, the signs were compliant before, they were enforceable before. I think our take is they're still enforceable. I really don't want to go out there painting red curbs because that kind of infers that parking is allowed if there's not a red curb. It's just kind of a mixed bag.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I just, again, just to recap, I'd like to see a fresh set of eyes, just take a look at it with recognizing the travel lane and the bicycle lane will stay, and look at it from that perspective. Is there areas that would accommodate the 8 feet for a safe parking spot, and what are those areas? Because it may not be something you choose to implement now, but it would be nice to have that as that place continues to develop over the years. And there may be some areas that can be improved now to accommodate a few cars that need places to park. I don't know, but you don't know until you see it. So it'd be a good review.
Okay. So you'll take care of that, and I'm sure that'll cost us a couple bucks.
Well, they're doing the study now on the pedestrian street.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's why it's good to tie it together.
Okay,
I
right.
take a little bigger, broader look at that.
Thank you. All right, does anyone need a break? No? Okay. All right, David, the next part of the agenda is yours. Standing items 1 through 15. It's nothing to say, you can pass.
Okay, on the car wash, we're active in the code enforcement process. We had a hearing officer review our case. We were expecting to hear back from the hearing officer by this week, so we need to check in on where that.
I talked to Robert Smith today. Thinks it's late, but he doesn't want to, in his words, he didn't want to push the guy, maybe because he doesn't want to upset him or just.
Check them.
Well,
Well, seriously.
Well,
I've been
it's,
with it for years.
he's trying to get a certain outcome, so.
Well, the thing is,
We're about 5 days late. That's 5 days late.
well, again, the public safety and health and safety hasn't gone away. And so it's not just a normal code enforcement. This is like a serious deal where there is safety issues, as we talked about with the equipment and people going in and about that area. And So,
He's gonna reach out to him and just say, where's the decision?
yeah, because if we need to go past that and get an injunction from the court, we could do that too.
That's gonna take, yeah,
Well, it's gonna
I
take,
agree.
but you know, it's been way too long.
oh, I know.
And again, if it takes that, we need to do it. Otherwise, we're just gonna be here in a year talking about it. So, put me on record. If we need to go to the court, we'll get Jose's team on it and we'll do it. And we'll get a court order that abate that nuisance because it's an abatable nuisance. And
Absolutely.
it's a public health and safety issue.
Trash is
Well, the
piling up.
trash, the mice, the rodents, and then you've got open pits that children could fall in and somebody could get hurt. It's just not an acceptable thing. So if we can't get this resolved within this week, I'm all for this. Go take it right and get a court order to abate it. So you can quote me on that.
Understood. I'm with you, Joe.
You won't be around that.
Oh.
So,
Jeez. I got 3 more weeks.
Go around,
We know it's not only council priority, it's
It's
community
a
priority.
community, yeah.
We're really hoping to have the hearing officer, I think it was signed through in county court, so I'm not sure what the delay, but we'll.
Well, yeah, and again, they're all busy and our problem is probably not their #1 issue, but it is ours, so. I just, not trying to be fictitious, but we've been dealing with this for a long time. And I just want to see us, take it serious in the sense where we're not getting results, take it to the next level.
All right, moving ahead, item 2, that's on the work plan for our staff to coordinate with that, the modification at the North Street intersection with Boulevard. No updates, just that it's scheduled or it's on the list and I just need.
Can we get maybe a date, a target date for the schedule to do that? And Vanessa, you were gonna look about possibly putting a red flashing light in the middle of that intersection. We talked about that because I really think it would make a lot of sense because of just the way that intersection is designed. And being a school crossing right there, the 4-ways or the 3-way stop doesn't always catch the driver's attention. And if we could, I know there's power out there, so I'm not sure what that would take just to put a flashing red light.
David had the good idea to use one of those. I've seen them where you have lights all the way around the stop sign. Not to be a little bit more visible. But yeah.
Vanessa, they do have in the vehicle code, a red flashing light is a separate section. So you have the arterial stop sign and then the flashing red light, but the red light does really catch the attention. And since it is a required stop, it would make sense to just put the flashing red light up there. Because again, putting it around us, we have a lot of problems when rain and these lights don't work right and they don't go off. And I just think that would be a short, inexpensive fix to put if we could hang a light. I've seen them in many, many locations right in the middle. That would be just a red flashlight.
With a pole and overhead.
Well, it's usually on a, you run it from pole to pole across, it'd be in the center, and it's just a flashing light.
Oh,
And it's red. And you're gonna see it day or night, it's there. It's gonna, and you still have the arterial, but you have the red light. So I just think because of the nature of that particular location with the junior or elementary school right there, it would make a lot of sense. I literally see people come through that intersection. They just don't see those stop signs.
So are you potentially then, are you talking about something similar to what's on South Cloverdale Boulevard now at, what is that? Is that Tarman Drive?
Well, that's a structure. I think Councilmember Paul is referring to actually one of those lights that you see in tornado zones. They have them, they're hanging on cords.
I see.
I don't know if they're cords, wires.
cable, yeah, and it's just a flashing red light. And it's it's perfectly enforceable, so. And it's good visibility, I mean, it really, there's no way you cannot see that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would be that expensive in the scheme of things to put something like that in place.
Okay, David.
So, thank you.
Next item was, approximate infrastructure costs for pedestrian, improvements. And that there's a attachment in the packet with the worksheet. This was with an exhibit.
2.9.
So I think the direction from the subcommittee was to prepare an exhibit. The company, there's actually two exhibits. So there's the preliminary cost estimates that were previously shared with the subcommittee, and then corresponding figures to identify the proposed improvements along that corridor.
So if I could get Vanessa and David, if you could just kind of fine tune it, which you feel is the finished product, and forward that to me. And then I want to get that to my contacts at Senator McGuire's office, because he committed to take a look at it and to see what, if any, help they can get us funding. But I want to make sure I got the most up-to-date documents that, and with how I'm going to structure it and send it to them, asking them to review it and to see if they could assist us in trying to locate funding. Ideally, Vanessa, I know we talked briefly about it, but if we could get it like, like phase 1, 2, 3, the goal to do all 3 phases. But really, if we can only come up with, say, $1 million, what would be phase 1 covered in that $1 million that's most critical to make it as safe as we can? If that's all the budget we had to work on. If we could get 2 and then maybe 3. So I'm trying to kind of pare it down, because when we spoke, he did mention, what are you talking about? $1 million, $1.5 million? I said, well, I don't know, it'd probably be more than that. So I'm thinking we may not be successful in getting all of it, but if we can get a piece of it and we can explain what we're going to use that piece for. So I'm thinking like a 3-phase that would lay it out, and then we'll go for the full amount, but with luck, we get it. But if not, if we got a partial, we can explain what we're going to do with the partial. That would be real helpful. Yeah. So when I get that, I will take it and get it to their office and start seeing if we can get them working on it for us. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of looking at these costs,
Yes.
and yeah, I don't see anything that really jumps out that you're able to do ahead of time, except maybe the sidewalk.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe what you think is the most critical first phase being, like, say you had $1 million, that's the budget. If we use that number, what would we do with that $1 million? So then put that part in phase 1. Phase 2, what if we had another $1 million, was the second most important. And then phase 3 is the finished product. And I just want to have options to try to sell it. So we can, if we can't get it all, we get a piece. This is what we're going to accomplish with that piece. Thank you. I appreciate all your work on that.
So the kind of break the project into 3 phases.
Yeah, because I used the $1 million because that's the number he threw out.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of make sure that we play that number.
Costs will probably go up, because what we did as kind of a comprehensive project, so,
Yeah.
if you do it in 3 phases, you get multiple mobilization.
And we can put all that in there, in like a narrative that, our goal is to do the full project, because if we don't, these numbers will go up over time. Yeah, all that's good information. The main thing is, I don't want to have them say there's no way we could fund 3 million or get that.
Right.
So put it aside, try to push it. Well, maybe we can do the $1 million. He was going to work with Caltrans and Safe Routes to School to see about getting the funding.
And so just for talking purposes, kind of looking at this, if we talk about doing the sidewalk right away, that's kind of married to the curb and gutter.
Yeah.
City standards is you can't put in, gutter if you don't have
Drainage.
corresponding drainage inlets, spaced accordingly. And so, now we can really get into the rabbit hole. And so if it's, sidewalk and all of the appurtenant facilities that go with a traditional sidewalk, we're probably looking at $1.5 million.
Yeah,
Just really loosely looking at these numbers. Now, if we pull it back a little bit and looking at the exhibit, the first page of the exhibit, if we're talking strictly about pedestrian improvements, then it's possible this 8-foot wide path off of Asti, that's the low hanging fruit. That's the easy pedestrian safety improvements.
Yeah, but he said $1 million to $1.5 million. So if you did the sidewalk, the curb and the gutter and then the drainage, you're right there. That should be choice number one, Mike. This is what we need.
Yeah, no street light.
Yeah,
that
no street
that would
light.
be phase one. And please, when you put that together, could you explain it, why those are, this is why, because it's important to understand. Well, just do this, the sidewalk, don't do the others. No, you can't do that. Here's why. So that, I want to kind of make it real clear that we're not just throwing numbers out there. That this has been well thought out, and this is why these things are needed.
Just to suggest, maybe, because even street lighting, as we talked about, is really important, so we need to extend, the sidewalk, so maybe it's just eliminating the path. Like with path, without path,
Sure.
is two, so then you've got curb, gutter, drainage, lighting, it's just basic safety, right? None of no additional pathway.
Right.
That might.
And again, it's all important. The goal is to do it all. It's just a matter if we only have a set amount of money, this is what we're going to do first, second, and third. But I really need to understand, because he won't know any better than I know, why all that has to be done at one time in phase one. That's what we need well explained.
Understood. I'll break it out.
Perfect, thank you. And then once I get that, I will get it to the right people. I really appreciate all your work on this. This is really helpful. Nice to get some funding to make some of these improvements happen.
Before the project.
That's right.
I mean, we'll take it with or without the project, and then it's time for you down the road. All right, David. What's next?
Okay, park irrigation, I think this time we'll confirm with Hector that the irrigation has been turned off for the season.
Okay. How about pedestrian pathway leaving Cherry Creek? I think we kind of covered that already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what about the easement? That was a big issue. Did you see that easement?
We're still working with the city attorney's office on review of the easement, and they're asking, our city attorney's asking for one of the older recorded documents, so we're working on that, which would enable her to complete her legal review. I think it's a preliminary review, but there's part of just making sure that we're dotting our i's, crossing our t's, and the review that she has the need for one additional legal document, so we're trying to track down.
Now, in the meantime, that gate is being closed. Every time I go by, it's closed.
Yeah. To our knowledge, the gate has been closed even before we received the complaints. Now, that doesn't mean that residents from Tarman don't make their way up that driveway. You have friends who live in that project, understand the safety concerns. I mean, even if the gates permanently locked, I'm not sure it's going to alleviate all that, but at least we can put in place our appropriate measures.
When do you think we could have a final answer to get back to the property owners and Cherry Creek?
Well, because of the nature of the concern that is expressed, it's probably gonna be a closed session item.
Okay.
I'll see if we're unable to, sometimes tracking down a recorded document is just not always. Or easements were done on maps and things like that they're not even recorded. They're part of a map, so. That was the challenge, just one final piece that we were working to obtain. And we'll I think because of the potential expression of concern from the property owner that this may be a closed session.
Potential litigation.
Potential litigation.
Good, thank you.
Let's see, we talked about the striping plan, the DWR grant, that's been executed well underway. I did want to report that, we are preparing an article, for the Cloverdale Connect that's going to really focus on the AMI project. It's going to be a lot of, I think, really good information that's going to go out to the community about, the benefits of this project and why it's tied to drought relief. There seems to be just ancillary to this update, concern about how this project relates to the rates. And the simple answer is that it's really an independent project that was predicated on the water savings that would be generated. But with that said, there was a CIP, and in order to be able to deliver the project in full as required by the grant, it was necessary to use a debt service strategy, meaning we wouldn't be able to carry out the project in full, even with because the grant was only funding half of it. The other half of it would have to be funded by
General fund.
by fund balance.
Oh.
And that would have been a significant requirement of the water enterprise funds fund balance. So given that, it was really necessary to engage in a debt service strategy. But as a debt service strategy, it really kind of, if you look at it as a standalone project, the water savings generated from that and the anticipated revenue from current water losses really was intended to pay for itself. So in the long run, so it's not within this short time frame of the rate study. So anyways, we're not going to touch on that so much, the financing piece, but really give an overview of the project in the Cloverdale Connects as projects come, which I think will be really informative. We're waiting to finalize our debt financing. We're scheduled to close by December 12th. And once we've already implemented work orders and so forth, that once we close, we're going to be off and running on implementation. Starting with the water meter project, the grant. The other components include the upgrade of SCADA and both a well replacement and a well rehabilitation. And the well replacement really could be looked at, and in some regards, as a new well, in the sense that it's when the rehabilitation is actually going to make improvements to an existing well, where the replacement is going to technically move the existing well. Will be removed from service, but add a new well. So
Will that be on the east side?
this one will not. I think it's identified to be within the same area, but we also have a CIP for a new well. So I think our goal first and foremost is to kind of keep grant done, and then we'll be looking at at that point, once we rehabilitate one of our existing wells that's really an underproducer, replace one of our existing wells that's an underproducer, where we stand. And I think the hope, I think, is that we're gonna have better production. And, overall, we have good production as it is, but this should add some resilience to our system. Vanessa, any thoughts on the well replacement, well rehab piece or water meter project? I'm waiting to hear back from Hawkeye on our updates on our article.
Yeah, I think you've covered it. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that we're really using. This is one of the Cloverdale Connect articles is one of the methods we're going to be using for grant required public outreach. And effectively stakeholder engagement. At some point, you'll also probably see some signage going up at City Hall or in some of these project sites. But this is kind of the first phase of our public outreach.
So could we also include some language in either this article or future article about all the things that still need to be done? Because there's this feeling that we're just collecting a lot of money and the grants are paying for it and we're just adding more debt. And that's just not the case at all. And what comes to mind is the tank that needs to be replaced and why that's important. That's really an important piece because if the tank was to fail, and is it Ryder tank or Ritter?
Well, there's also the chlorine tank.
Yeah.
I think the Cherry Creek tank is the most significant in need of replacement.
Well, yeah, and one of them was, I remember Darren telling us, and I can't remember the name of the tank, but if that tank fails, then we would have a major problem, or you can't even take it out of service to service it because there's no way to get water. So these people don't understand all this, and I think it's really helpful if, we're making progress, but there's a lot of things still that need to be happening. And we're working to try to fit these in over time. Obviously, they're expensive improvements and we're trying to do it within a reasonable time frame without raising a lot of rates. So, somehow to be able to kind of let people know this isn't like we're just collecting money and wasting it.
No, I agree, Joe. The Cloverdale Connect, you can be ready once that article is published to have emails coming in from certain individuals that are going to totally disagree with what's there. Yeah. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, we've been responding to a tremendous amount of emails. Kevin gets some ideas and Susan gets some.
Well, we get some too.
Yeah.
So, but the key is they're really hitting all the things we're doing, but we're not really telling what we're not doing and what still needs to be done. And I think that opens up a bigger picture of what's out there.
And there was another city, the woes of Flint, Michigan, and the problems that they had because they weren't keeping up their maintenance on their water systems. And there was another one, Jacksonville. And for crying out loud, we got one right down the road called 6 acres. Years of neglect. And a little further down is Cloverdale Water District, South Cloverdale Water District. So, we don't want to fall into that state of disrepair because then we really have a problem. Anyhow, my 2 cents. Next.
Okay, so basketball courts, we have executed the agreements, got insurance and bonds with the contractor that was selected for the project, Region Construction, and I think.
Yeah, I spoke to him today. He could start as early as December 5th. I have to check with Hector, make sure he's done everything he needs to do out there. And then depending on rain, but Reggie's got a little time, so we might be able to.
Excellent.
Good. Yeah,
All
we'll try
the
to get.
paperwork is done. We're just coordinating a time to get it, looking at rain, and so we're excited about that.
And not the wave of the point in me, but he's surfacing over the existing.
It's coming out
completely.
Yeah, and we thought that might be able to happen, but then the engineers determined because of the drainage work.
Yeah.
There's a new drain, and so And one tree is coming down, which is unfortunate, but it's not the healthiest tree, so.
Are you gonna replace the tree?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's important to tell people that, no, this tree is not.
Well, there's one oak, I think there might be another one that's not a native tree, but, this we did a really nice course.
Oh,
Has
yeah.
all courts, full size, painted, full works.
Yeah, so that, we'll want to communicate out, route park closures and signage and things like that. The hikers are very good at that. So, let's move forward.
It's exciting programs.
Be great.
Very excited. Thank you guys for all your hard work on that.
Let's see, phase 3, we were fortunate enough that, the fuels crew and Northern Sonoma County Fire District wanted to do some additional vegetation management work. Guess they had, some additional funding. They covered the area that, was required by our agreement with them. But they went back in, actually, they're working this week to do some additional, vegetation management work. And really just the next step is just, targeting the time frame for doing addressing the remaining vegetation that could be chipped because of its location, through prescribed burning activities. And they're kind of prepped, for that. And we rely on our fire experts to kind of determine, when's the best date, for conducting that work. So I would anticipate between now and January, we'll have the notice out regarding some of the prescribed burning, and we try to make sure the community is aware of that, so there's no significant concerns. But I think it's tremendous. We've accomplished quite a bit with this. I mean, we're up to probably at least 30, 35 acre area that's been managed.
It's fantastic.
And it costs about $100,000 so far. But I think we've done a good job at reducing potential fire.
Is there a mechanism? I know, didn't the county buy a chipper program or a chipper that could be used by private homeowners? And
They did. They had a program. I think we put some information in the newsletter.
is that available to city residents?
I think they have since, they just discontinued. I think they got a certain amount of funding to do from the county, when the county had the fairly sizable grant, and they for the most part expended that. But I think they, for instance, they did some work for Clover Springs on Bat Hill. So there was a lot of it was focused around the unincorporated area, on the larger landscape areas, like Lighter Ranch was one of them. There was a lot of concern there. They did work there, but generally city residents didn't have big landscape areas.
Well, I'm thinking on the outskirts, like my neighbor, Allen River has quite a bit of property right there. There's quite a lot of vegetation all around that going up. I was unaware. I would have turned them on to that project.
Right.
Do you foresee something like that?
I would recommend that he reach out to Chief Jenkins or Joe, if you reach out to him and say, they seem to try to, if they've got extra resources or and there's a fire threat, they seem to be trying to tackle those areas pretty aggressively, and at least even get them out to take a walk and take a look and something. Yeah, can do that.
I'll do that because I know there's quite a bit of vegetation up there. You had the pleasure of driving around up there in that all-terrain vehicle,
Yeah.
and so did I. And I think it could be there's a lot of potential to get rid of a lot of vegetation that's down, and
Especially if you can show that it's a potential threat to the city.
well, it is. It's really close to a lot of homes. Yeah.
We're pretty fortunate this year with the fire situation.
Right. Okay, David. All right, well, moving on, under the item 10, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, Potter Valley Relicensing Project. Kind of interesting development. Both Vanessa and I attended a meeting that was sponsored by the town of Windsor on Thursday last week. They are in the midst of forming a group called the Russian River Reuse Collaborative, so kind of R3 Collaborative, around focused on one, the use of recycled water. And of course, shared with the group that, we're just now kickstarting our feasibility study with West Yost to start looking at advanced treatment. Cities are increasingly commoditizing the recycled water because it's of tremendous value. Windsor already has a pretty robust program before they used to have a challenge getting rid of their water, and now they almost don't have enough to serve the surrounding farms. And what that's doing is it's offsetting potable or well water from those farms. And so that's a group that's kind of starting up to get organized, to come up with a plan to kind of address what we see the especially on the federal level, the entities that are successful in getting funding are doing it as a region rather than as individual cities. And we know these federal grant requirements are really big and burdensome. And what they're asking for is what's the regional benefits from this project, from the project. And so it starts to where we could have a project, and let's say Windsor has a project, and we go together as an entity and we show all the benefits, and there's a possibility of having a better success in getting funding if we have an organization. So it's that part of the process just started. How that relates to the topic of Potter Valley is that the same group could serve as a group to address the impact of what could very well happen with Potter Valley project is two things. We could potentially lose access to that water, which is a tremendous value to our water supply, or we are going to have to pay for it, and we meaning everybody who takes advantage of that, and it's unclear exactly how that water benefits individual entities like Cloverdale. We know it gets put into Lake Mendocino and it contributes to the flow in the Russian River, and then you've got everybody downstream like us. We've got our straws in there and we're using water, whether it's from the groundwater or from our pumps, whatever. So starting to look at that and putting in place an entity that's going to help address the management of that water is kind of what we're looking and seeing. That's probably where it's going to go. And the question is going to be probably is going to come down to is what's our individual benefits and what are our respective costs, as part of being a participant in some kind of regional entity that may manage that water supply that's coming through the Potter Valley project. But there's so much uncertainty right now. The two basin solution that's been promulgated by Huffman is kind of lost some of its wings. It's there's not a lot of activity, but PG&E is moving forward with getting rid of the project. So there needs to be someone to step in to say, fill that vacuum, and who is that going to be, and who's going to manage it, and I think Grant Davis, the general manager, was at the meeting, says Sonoma Water can't take it all on, and we're going to need to look to all of you as partners. And some of them they contract with, so they have that relationship. We're our own entity, so I think it's good to participate. Vanessa got the support to attend through her firm as I think through the Russian River Watershed Association. So she gets to listen and be part of that discussion, but not necessarily at our expense. Of course, this is just getting going, so we'll see where it goes. The interest was in establishing, really what might be a new regional water entity, kind of like Smart or Sonoma Clean Power or so that, because the real interest in staff saying, well, it has to be staff driven, and it's kind of like, well, if we're going to be talking about funding and staff time and all that, you're going to have a role for elected officials. So this is just getting going there, and there's examples in other parts of the United States where these groups have come together to form regional entities that kind of address drought, water related issues. And I made a comment that like we have zero waste and we have all these entities, but what's the number one issue right now? Is water. And we're all kind of going our own, and we're going to have to kind of come together as a region and figure out how we're going to meet the water supply of Sonoma County, because we're kind of I don't want to say we're an island, but we don't get water from anywhere else other than Otter Valley. That's our only really external source. It's all we rely on our rainfall, precipitation, our groundwater. Yeah, and so how we manage that, that's where you bring in this reuse through what Healdsburg, Windsor, Santa Rosa, and Cloverdale will be the next one. Those are all going to make important contributions to the water supply, and I think it's going to be vital that Cloverdale involve the agricultural interests, because I feel like that's going to be one of our key partners that's going to help to fund our improvements and our maintenance, or it's going to be a revenue source to help fund ongoing operations, because even Healdsburg was there and they're saying they have more businesses, they have a larger population, they have some of the highest wastewater rates around, and they need to increase them. And it's an issue with high fixed costs and a low customer base, and we're going to be in that same boat if we don't come up with a creative solution to how we're going to fund this.
Are all of those farms out there on the east side, are they all on wells that are being monitored now? Or is it just take what you want?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of reporting that's required.
Yeah.
So I think the state increasingly has its just like us, our reporting requirements have went up significantly, and I think you're seeing that all up and down the Russian. It's all the entities are having to do a lot more reporting. So I think probably what the state's doing is getting a handle on what is all this water use, and they're increasingly bringing in the connection to groundwater. So at some point, maybe in the future, there's not going to be a difference where you put the well.
Yeah.
The county's looking at doing a well moratorium. I think it's in effect. So I mean, there's all these pieces that are kind of coming together, and I think that'll lead to the need for us to have collaborative conversations, or on how we're going to govern ourselves, who's going to pay for it. Some really tough discussions to come, especially if drought continues to persist, or come around more often.
And I think we could take to get out of there. It may be a 1 or 2 years here and there that we don't have the drought, but I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, it's 3:30, so let's button her up here.
Okay, no updates, Chair, on the ASIP, the Airport Capital Improvement Project. At this point, 6 acres, we are getting a request to expedite the annexation process. Just sent an email back to the group that we're working with that, we need to, prior to annexation, we need to conduct rezoning, or not rezoning, excuse me, pre-zoning. We need to approve pre-zoning, which is, would be based on consistency with the general plan for that area. And do the environmental review and ask council to approve it. That would be the precursor to annexation. So that would put in place, basically, once annexed, these properties appear to zone. I don't think it's a big mystery or anything like that. What it's going to be, it's designated by the general plan. It'd probably be like medium density residential, which is consistent with what the land use out there. But they want to move very quickly, and working staffing, for lack of a better word, pressure to get this work done. Unfortunately, in this conversation we're going to have next week is who's paying for it, and so we don't have budget for them to, to do all this work that needs to get done.
And I don't think we should be doing that work. They should be funding it.
Right.
It's a mandate. Again, I just think if they, at least my position, if they come out, we have to pay for it. So we don't have the funding, therefore we can't proceed with the work.
Mhm.
Bottom line, we don't have the money.
Right.
There's other things we need to use our money for right now, and that's not high on my list. I mean, I definitely know it needs to be done, but that's something the state needs to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, well, staff, it's 100% in line with you, council member, and we heard that from council in general. We'll convey that message. It just, we know there's some tough political players involved.
Well, look, as far as I'm concerned, this sets the precedence for South Cloverdale Water District. Whatever we do here, we're gonna be expected to do the same on down the line till we get the rainwater district. So,
I just don't think the city's in a position to be able to pay all these expenses because somebody else is telling us we need to do it to help a situation. That's not our problem.
well, the thing that ticks me off more than anything is their lack of neglect for the last 25, 30 years enforcing the violations that were never repaired. Now all of a sudden Cloverdale's got to pay for it, because you can do your job in Sacramento, inspect and enforce, we get to pay for it.
That's what I think we should, the limited funding we have a lot of wants, a lot of needs, and that is not high on my list.
And just let the ratepayers know the rates are going up because of rainwater district.
Yeah.
And I still think that should entitle us, by taking them in, that should entitle us to some extra funding, some extra grants to complete these capital improvement projects. But who knows?
Well, we can certainly make the case.
You've heard me rattle on. Got it. Okay.
No updates, Chair, Rule 20A.
Okay.
On the First Street Carpet Bridge, we just continue to track the county's progress on their improvement plans. We got back a lot of the comments, or we sent comments. We got some feedback on some of them, and we're just waiting to get back kind of final design plans for that.
Before we leave go any further, I want to go back to that last soil on the water. If it gets down where it's hardball, I would like to get a narrative of just kind of what's happened, where we're at, and what they're telling us. And then I want to try to get both Gore and Wood engaged in the conversation.
Okay.
I think it's important that, and I think, so if they start being adamant, they're not going to pay for it, they're demanding that we do it, and there's not that, let's fix this, bring me into that conversation with you, and
Absolutely.
let's just get them engaged in the conversation. That's just not.
Yeah. Well, if I can debate this all day, but Gore's never come to the table at these meetings with his checkbook. And that's part of the fact that there's over 400 water agencies in Sonoma County. They're trying to consolidate them all, the county is, but they don't have the sufficient funding to do it. So for them, but I don't know where Gore would get his money.
Well, it's more the states demanding, it, not the county, and I think we need to go where and in fairness to Gore, he's come up with quite a bit of money to do several good projects, but I don't think it's the county that's pushing.
No,
it's the
no,
state,
what-
right?
Yeah, but what I think is happening is the county getting pushed like we are by the state. And as a result, they're trying to consolidate their own and they don't have money to do
No,
it. So, yeah.
No, I agree 100%. It's sad.
Okay, David, sorry.
Okay.
Let's see.
Report on the bridge, broadband.
And broadband, and we are looking at the current funding requirements. Anyway, I mentioned that we were coordinating with Sonoma County. And with this latest funding, I did get inquiries from some local interests and, applying for funds. And what was shared with me was that the funding, at least in phase one, there tend to be multiple phases, but really directed at extending broadband in areas where it doesn't exist. And so what that kind of means is extending it out to your unincorporated areas. That's kind of phase one. And so that the issue that we're kind of dealing with is for service, expense. It's kind of like that next round. And so anyways, this is really, I think, and I thought it was a good comment, was you're gonna have better success to see how well the county succeeds in extending it out to the incorporated area before you go for funding to improve service where you already have it. But the one interest which would be beneficial is if we actually develop a broadband improvement plan. So we developed a strategy or a strategic plan around how we as a city want to improve broadband. So, if we said, hey, we want to have public Wi-Fi in our parks, what does that take? Have an engineer look at what's the cost to extend, the broadband infrastructure to those locations, come up with cost estimates, and then be ready for that next round. So we were looking at, we put it on the list along with our other grant opportunities, and we're still evaluating.
If there's no questions on standing items 1 through 15, we'll go ahead and move on to informational reports.
None, Chair.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just throw something out there. I do a lot of walking in City Park, and the other night I was watching PBS, and there was a show on woodpeckers, and there's over 200 varieties of woodpeckers around the world. And they were talking about the red-headed woodpecker, which we have here in Cloverdale. And they're the holes that they put in the old oak trees, and then they shove the acorns in there. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they're all over Second Street Park. And I just thought that was kind of amusing. But the other thing about Second Street Park is they started to put the sclery coat down. And they did that a couple of weeks ago, and of course it rained, so they're out there doing it again. I'm wondering at some point if we could just get that whole trail redone. I know that the ideal way to do that would be rip up all the asphalt and lay new. But I know on the highway, Caltrans, a lot of times they'll lay an 1 or 2 inch layer of asphalt over the existing, which is a lot more financially feasible to do it that way. Is there anything we could do along those lines to redo that trail?
Well, it's just really a function of council saying it's a priority to get it done, and I think we do have to look at it from a structural standpoint. Just like we would do a road improvement if it's in fairly good shape if you can do, like you said, an overlay. Where you don't want to overlay something that the foundation is in such condition that it's just gonna impact your overlay. So it would probably be kind of a mini pavement assessment, Vanessa.
No, for the record, I hate putting pavement in if I don't look at the underlying utilities first.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any in the farm. I don't
Okay.
think there are any utilities, it's just the trail, but it's a discussion we should have later on down the road.
But I mean, we could, you know, maybe Vanessa do a basic, just a basic assessment, what if you want to get your steps in, on one of your recent visits, you could join Gus and Gracie on a morning walk, and do a kind of a mini pavement
Quick
assessment and see if it fits the criteria for a pavement overlay.
And you said City Park,
Yeah,
Second Street City Park.
Second Street.
And you know, we want to get Hector too, because he could tell you where the utilities are located.
okay, and then, that was it, future agenda items.
We almost had it done, but we're gonna bring it back, at the next meeting. Is we did an evaluation of for the replacement of all the garbage cans in the downtown corridor, with new, larger cans that are dual cans that have both recycling and garbage. Really nice, and they have a different lid structure that I think would, well, whether they're pro food or not, I don't know. You know, because those require, crows are pretty crafty, so, but I think they're designed to be more, generally speaking, vermin resistant, so. We did the evaluation of the number, we got cost estimates for some different models, and we were gonna come up with some alternatives, we'll bring that back.
I have one, and there's a fellow in town by the name of Ken Screechfield. I don't know if you both know him, but he's a retired employee of the Sonoma County Water Agency. And he's been talking to me over the last 6 months, and he also calling Kevin and I about looking at the billing program we do for our water bills. And he's toting the program that Santa Rosa does. And Vanessa, I don't know if you know what they do, but they use the winter rates, and they kind of, I think they do like a cost averaging.
It was designed to encourage water conservation in a way that was punitive. And that's kind of all I really got out of them, but we're.
Yeah, and part of the reason they do that is it also it sets your wastewater rate. Because everybody pays a flat rate,
Yeah,
but each customer has a different amount of water usage. So you use winter rates, you average winter rates, water usage to determine
so
next year's wastewater rates.
okay.
So because the presumption is that you're kind of looking at everybody on an equal playing field, because during those months, less people are irrigating. So you get a kind of an equal assessment of how much water they're using. And that's the basis on which your charge, it sets your wastewater rate for the next year.
Gotcha.
So that it's a way to better tie your wastewater rates to your water rates. So it's, for some, that means higher wastewater rates, for others that means lower. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna leave it up to you, Kevin, if you want to agendize it. Sure. if you don't, that's fine. I know that you might have to do some homework with Santa Rosa. And like I said, if you have time, fine. If not, we'll just put it on a future. Okay? Vanessa, anything else from your corner? Well, thank you for joining us.
Just one
Councilmember
thing,
Paul?
just one final thing, the planter box that was damaged by a vehicle accident several months back is still not repaired. And I wanted to see if we can take a look at that and get that repaired. I would hope that there's insurance involved, that the person, but even if there isn't, we need to still get it fixed. I appreciate the lights fixed here at the crossing, but the planter box up the street is still missing components. The topping's still gone. So you could take a look at it and see what it needs to fix that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else out in the audience, Mike? No.
No one is raising their hand at this time, Chair.
Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting to December the 7th at 1:30 here at City Hall. Meeting adjourned.